Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seasons Podcast. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Doug.
And we are so excited to be back with you, continuing our season on rest. And today we have a really special guest, one of our friends, Karl Sprague is here with us. Karl, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
I'm so excited to introduce you. Karl is an executive coach. And what that means is that he has been coaching leaders across a wide range of industries, business models, and company sizes. And I heard that you've done over 11,000 hours of one-on-one meetings. That's
a lot of conversation.
So fun, Karl. That's awesome. But really what that shows is that you've seen all faces of leadership, the good, the bad, the difficult, the dysfunctional, the ugly. And so we're excited to talk to you today about something that is a rising thing happening in work culture today, which is burnout. Burnout. But first, I would like to know, how did you become an executive coach? When did these hours start clocking?
The hours started 20 years ago.
Okay.
I had been an investment banker doing mergers and acquisitions and had two partners at the time. One left the area, another one was transitioning, and I had a decision to make. And I thought, well, this is something that I could do 1 week out of the month. I'd continue to do investment banking. And between complications and schedules, I needed to make a decision. And this just fit my background, my personality. This was the first time in my career I felt a calling. Okay. And so honored that. And for the last 20 years, this has been the day job.
Yeah, and as I've worked with you and watched you lead at 4Kids and other nonprofit work, I see that calling is a gift. You were made for it. So grateful that you're here to share some of those experiences.
No, pleased to be here. Yeah. Look forward to it.
So for anyone listening that maybe isn't familiar with what this work is that you do, what do you do as an executive coach? What does that look like?
There are approximately 50 executives that I work with in the Tri-County area at any given time. Most of those are operating in a group called Vistage, where I facilitate monthly meetings for CEOs who meet a full day once a month. Their subject matter experts share best practices and put their big challenge or opportunity on the table and get advice from their peers. And then there are half a dozen other CEOs that I work with and coach on a monthly basis. But it's across all company sizes, industries. So it's manufacturing, distribution, service, retail, for-profit, nonprofit. And it just gives me different perspectives on what works, what doesn't, what functions highly, what's dysfunctional, that hopefully I can bring to the next client meeting that I have with one of my clients.
So most of the people that are going to call you are pretty driven. They're pretty goal-oriented. They want to build something. They want to grow something, or they're in the middle of something that's gotten so big, they're like, I don't know what to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you help them sort through all those things and not get to burnout?
That's the challenge.
That's the 11,000 hours of conversation.
It is. Part of that's the challenge of that a driven personality going 100 miles an hour. Part of it is cultural to where we are now with the idea of more. And leaders who are driven, it's more revenues, it's more products, more services, more interactions, more marketing, and on and on and on. And out of that, there's the law of diminishing returns. There is the inevitable burnout, unless you get your hands around that and have the right people and the process and the priorities to do it effectively. And sometimes, and a big part of it is when to say no.
The question for probably everyone.
Which is as important as anything else.
So how do you help ask the right questions for a leader to grasp the self-awareness of this ends really poorly if I just keep on going more and more and more and more? How do they grasp the self-awareness? I need to stop and pause and think.
Well, part of that is the value of having these peer groups, because people can be so much more observant when they're looking at someone else. And Doug is about to crash, and then you hold up the mirror to that person. Ooh, I'm exhibiting the same behavior. I've got some of the same challenges. Yeah, I have that blind spot too. And it helps them recognizing themselves. And then part of it too is the the one-to-one coaching. It's not just the group meetings, but I do one-to-one coaching with each of those individuals. And the number of times one of those sessions begins with, Karl, I haven't shared this with anybody else before, but, and then that takes us to a place that allows for some of that self-discovery.
Yeah.
And, this isn't working. Or well, let's talk about where that's headed. And the idea of, okay, there is a train wreck out there in the distance. And I'd like to say this happens occasionally, but it happens frequently, that in those discussions, there's the recognition of currently your family situation is healthy. The business is growing. Things are going well, but you're not taking care of yourself. And you are the potential brick wall that can cause the big crash that impacts the company, the family, the relationships. So let's avoid that wall.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where you're headed, how you're going to get there, how you can protect yourself. And predictably, oh, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah, no, I'll hold it together.
And so it's sometimes those conversations are a slow drip to the forehead where finally it's like, Karl, yeah, I'm ready to talk about that. We need to address this. And then it's a healthy conversation.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's people who take this advice fairly readily because they're hungry, and people that are more reticent, more like, I don't know. But can you give us a story of someone who took this advice and how it helped them in their business and in their life in general, like just a person who took a hold of this?
Well, let me share two stories.
Great. We love that.
And one is just that. It was the breakneck pace from a financial standpoint. The company's doing well, getting best places to work awards and that kind of thing. And just the amount of time spent over these one-to-one meetings where you see some of the joy is no longer there. What energized this person in the past, it's not, okay, they're going to start reaching for something else, and having that frank conversation, and in this particular case, and prayer, and the recognition. And I said, I don't want to wait 30 days to check in. I'll give you till next Tuesday. And said, let's talk. And got a text over the weekend. So we can talk right now, but I need to address this. And it, as often is the case, that not only changed that particular person, but discussions with his leadership team to ensure that they were addressing things in a healthy manner, leading to some retreats, some time off, and it became a topic of discussion. So it was healthy, not just for the individual, but for the whole team. The flip side of that, I mentioned these group meetings that we have. I had a conflict one day, couldn't attend one of the meetings, and was working with one of my other groups, conflict on the same day. So I couldn't be there. 2 weeks later, one of the members committed suicide.
Wow.
And as I replayed, okay, I understand I wasn't there then, but what did I miss? The last 10 one-to-one meetings, those interactions. And it really shook me up for a while. But then as a group, what did we miss? And so it's allowed me, it reset the field as I deal with clients now, is we're going to go deep and we're going to go there fast, because I am not going to, have a blind spot as it relates to those. And so there is as much time often on personal health and awareness and family relationships as there is how do we drive profit margin and how do we grow revenues and hire the next best talented person on our senior team. But it's And even people now where that was 17 years ago, as people come into my group, I warn them, I take this seriously and go through all that, and they understand it. And I did have one person quit who said, and God bless her, she said, Karl, I think you lose more sleep about my business than I do, and the rest of the group does. This is kind of a lifestyle for me, and it's fine.
Okay.
And that worked, and off she went. But the group takes it seriously, and so do I.
Now I'm thinking of, for our listeners, this isn't necessarily like a leadership podcast or an audience that's specifically like high-level CEO leaders, anything like that. So as I'm listening to what you've done or where your work has focused you, I know there's still a trickling effect to where how burnout affects just an everyday employee that's not in management, or maybe they're on a management track, or maybe they have two bosses. There's all kinds of different elements.
It is, I believe, as it relates to burnout doesn't discriminate. And it's not necessarily the CEOs, it's throughout the organization. Yeah. It is, and companies of any size, people of all ages, people of all levels within an organization. And some of that is the nature of work.
Yeah.
Some of it is the concept of more and focusing on that constantly. And the need to prioritize. It's not, can we do more things? No, can we do the right things? Can we do the most important things? Be the most productive in those? And then there is the notion that some of this is societal. Two things that come to mind. Study out of University of California, Irvine, said the average worker is interrupted every 11 minutes at work. Same study suggested that it takes you 25 minutes to get back to the same level of concentration. Wow. You're interrupted. I was never great with math, but if you're interrupted every 11 minutes and it takes you 25 minutes to get back there, you never have that highly focused content, which means you don't accomplish what you intended to. You get behind, you get frustrated, which leads to the stress, which compounds this. The other study, and I had my phone, with phones, the average worker checks their phone 77 times a day. The same person, that's during work hours. It's over 140 times during the course of the day. So that may be the text, the email, it may be social media, it may take you down the road, but 77 times during a work day, well, those are interruptions too.
Right, add those on.
And you still got the 25 minutes to get it. And so all this just begins to feed on itself. And I'm sure you've been in those meetings. Somebody picks up their phone across the table. I've got to check my email. And it just spreads. And that's business, that's society. And so that's not reserved for the CEOs. Right. That's all of us.
That's everybody.
And recognizing that. And then it's been compounded through COVID with remote work, virtual work. And some of that has been very helpful to provide balance. People can work from homes. They don't have to worry about picking up kids, taking care of the dog. But it also can lead to an 18-hour workday because my work is right there in front of me. And then it also doesn't allow for the sense of community that you get inside an office, which becomes, the shared responsibility of the manager of how do I make sure my people aren't on an island out there in their home. And for the individual, I need a sense of community. Where do I get that? And whether that's church, school, the neighborhood group. But, as humans, we crave that, need that. And so being mindful that when that gets disrupted, again, it leads to the stress, which creates the burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I'll say as it relates to burnout, very often people don't recognize it or see it until it's on full burnout mode. And there's some kind of physical manifestation or some relationship eruption that, oh, maybe something's wrong here, but it's been there under the surface.
So talk to us about, let's say someone's listening, they're at a job right now and they're like, I think I might be experiencing some of the beginnings of burnout. What should I be looking for? How do you know that you're experiencing some of that early stages of burnout?
Yeah. Well, combination of things. Lack of sleep and disruption to normal patterns. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that sense of I am working harder, but it's not as meaningful as I don't get the return on my investment of time and energy that I used to from this. And the notion of energy and the sense that what you're doing has meaning. And we all have tasks that we need to do from day to day. But the things, when there is a change in that, I was thrilled about doing this 6 months ago. Now it's drudgery. Sometimes it's, well, okay, it's repetitive. I've learned it. I'm ready to move on. And sometimes I don't know what that is. And that's where the burnout may be the reason for it.
Yeah, I heard someone say, I think it's 𝘾𝘃𝑼𝙍𝙑 talks about like embracing the gift of limits. That as a human being, you get tired, you have a limit, you have to sleep. You get hungry, you have to eat. You need community, you can't be on your own. That especially for high driving leaders, just going, to be human means I need to sleep, I need to eat, I need to rest, I need to be in community. And just really grappling with that as part of being a healthy human being and a healthy leader.
Yeah. Well, and that prescription wouldn't be limited just to leaders. It is something that I would say anyone who is an employee, first and foremost, it's your personal responsibility to take care of yourself. And sometimes that's setting routines. Sometimes it's setting boundaries. Sometimes it's when to say no, what you will do at what time, and that kind of thing. And it certainly that's helped or enhanced when there's the understanding manager or the manager who believes that is a priority and it becomes part of the discussion. But you can't stay in a routine or in an environment that becomes unhealthy and toxic to you. Sometimes it's brought on personally. We put these demands on ourselves. And when you boil it down, well, you should have told us you needed a break.
Who asked you to do that?
But part of it is those boundaries and those priorities.
Okay, so someone comes to you and says, look, Karl, this all sounds great, but I've got this many things to do. I can't do it in 40 hours. And so I'm giving up my evenings, my weekends, my time away from my wife or my kids or my life. And I have no choice. I'm trapped. How do you help them model a conversation with their supervisor? How do you help them? How do you walk them through that process?
That's a great question.
Call Karl.
Well, there are a couple of examples that I would give because these names tend to get leaders' attention. And it's a similar thought process. Steve Jobs, when he left Apple, was fired from Apple, started up next, was brought back to Apple. When he did, he brought his senior leadership team together. They went on a retreat. And he said, I want to know the top 10 priorities for our organization in ranked order. They spent 2 days, beat it up, came up with the list of priorities. And he said, great. Went up and drew a line between items 3 and 4. Said, we're going to focus on 3. Nobody can be responsible for 10 priorities and do it effectively. We will focus on these 3 and accomplish them. Warren Buffett takes it to another level where he suggests you come up with priorities in ranked order, draw the line between items 3 and 4, focus on the top 3, and then take items 4 through 10, put it on a separate list, And that list is entitled Avoid at All Costs.
Oh, wow.
Because it is those things that tease you. I can do a little bit of this. I can do a little bit of that.
They're distractions at that point.
And I think that's one of the challenges for managers, but a responsibility for a manager. You say, I can't do 10 things. There aren't enough. We all have the constraints of 24 hours in the day and 7 days a week. Right. There's only so much that can be accomplished. So help me prioritize this. Which are the things that you want me to accomplish? Which are the things we agree that I need to let go? And it's not a responsible response to say, you need to do them all. And so sometimes just having that difficult discussion opens some eyes. But it helps when you can throw in Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett to say, well, okay.
These guys did that.
There's Karl and then there's Steve and Warren. So
keep those names close, everybody. Okay, Karl. So based on then you have that tough conversation with your manager. You've already mustered up all of this courage to have the conversation. And then maybe you get a response that isn't what you thought you'd get. Now you have a decision to make. Like, my manager didn't actually respond the way I thought. They weren't as gracious or as understanding or as realistic as you're saying. Like, every leader should not have 10, 20 priorities. So at that point, that person walks away either way with a decision to make. Do I want to move forward in what they're telling me? Do I want to go back and have another conversation? So I'm just thinking of like the health of that process. Like, we all have to own what happens next. We can't expect our leaders to do everything for us, right? So can you just speak a little bit to the responsibility we all carry in the health of our own like soul through this process? You've talked a little bit about the burnout and self-awareness, but even just in holding that responsibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that gets lost in translation sometimes, but we are responsible for our own health and livelihood. And yes, we are employed, we're drawing a paycheck, and the fear of, well, what would I do if I were to leave here? But existing in a culture like that, if you are a victim, it's a tough place to be. And so there are good managers and bad managers, and there are people that sometimes will react in the moment. No, I just want you to take care of all 10 of those things. And 48 hours later, I've been thinking, Kelly, let's have that talk. And so sometimes it is, what are the tools? What are the examples that I can feed to my manager to perhaps break into that? But at some point, it's, no, this is a slave driver, and there is no reasonable measure that he or she has responded to. Now I have a decision to make. And that's one that staying too long in a situation like, and it's also, there are those times in the best of companies, the best of cultures, where there are deadlines and there are crises and things that you have to deal with. It's just when it's been over a period of time and starts to fall into the abuse area that is unhealthy, not just for that individual, but for the organization. And then, as you suggested, then you have a decision to make.
Right. Yeah, and I think about even your story. You didn't tell us that there was any sort of this in your own personal journey, but you did have a decision to make because of how your work was evolving in your scheduling, but it led to you walking into a calling that you felt really confident about, which has been this 20 years of success that you found in coaching. So I even think about the hard decisions people have to make at this crossroad could lead them into an even better opportunity. Yeah. Have you seen that in any of your situations?
Absolutely.
Just to give an assurance to people.
On a regular basis. Yeah. And there is a podcast called
You can't talk about other podcasts on the podcast. I'm just joking. No.
I crossed the ejection seat. Here I go.
No. What is it?
Guy Raz says How I Built This and interviews entrepreneurs. Yeah. Everyone's got a backstory. Oh, yeah. There is a massive failure, a big mistake, a revelation that got them on the path. The other one, there's a book, Living Fearless by 𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙍𝙍, who talks about your true identity in God's eyes. And when you identify that true identity, it is the calling, it is energizing, and it's not what others expected of you. And often it's not the route that you began, but that sense of peace around, this is what I was meant to do. And and the stories are legion about the mistakes and circuitous routes to get there. But it's also why the continued pursuit of what does light me up, what does energize me. And it's interesting. There was a book, 9 Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham, where he talks about the ability for people to use their strengths during the course of the day and how meaningful that is to them. But it's not, I need to utilize my strength all day, every day, or I won't be happy.
Right.
And they profiled or surveyed nurses. And if 20% of the time they were able to use their strengths on the job, they were engaged, they were energized, they loved their jobs. If it was less than 20%, they were disengaged and they were looking for work elsewhere. So recognizing that there's some amount of time when I can be, in the palm of God's hands, oh, this is wonderful. And so what is that? Where do I find it? And sometimes it's the people, sometimes it's the job itself.
Yes, I want to switch gears for a second, because I know that you do this professionally, you coach people, but you also have a bucket reserved where you volunteer, where you serve. You lead the chairman of the board of 4 Kids, which is, advocates for foster homes and hope, homes and healing for kids. And you spend a significant amount of time saying, hey, this is what I do to make a living, and then this is what I do to give back to the kingdom of God. Talk about how you made that decision, how you carved that time out.
Yeah, that too is part of the calling. And in my case, part of it involves children, which I have a burden for that I'm not necessarily coaching on a day-to-day basis, but it is consistent with my personal mission of educating and encouraging people to realize their dreams and achieve their goals. And when I can impact a child and the arc of their life to do those things, and whether that's through education or encouragement, I'm all in. And things lined up where 4 Kids does such a wonderful job that it allows me to work with the leadership there, but also through them into the community and into the lives of kids. So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful balance to watch, people who are successful in their vocation, but also invest in their marriage and their family, and then in their church and in their city. And it's beautiful to see that in your life.
Well, thank you. No, I mean, sometimes it's just fun, handing out food or moving tables and chairs and that kind of thing. But sometimes it is the same skills, background, and experiences that I have during the work week that can translate into a ministry like 4 Kids. And it's very rewarding.
And I think too, like burnout, and if you don't take care of it, can take away those opportunities from a person. So as a person is struggling in their professional career, but has a passion for, maybe serving in a community, doing something extracurricular, I feel like burnout would be the thing to kind of choke that out and be like, you don't have time to do something you love on the side. You don't have time for a passion project or a hobby. And then you really lose some of the identifiers of your life. So just knowing like, okay, Karl coaches 50 CEOs every month and still can serve on a board and serve in the community. Like it's possible for everyone.
Kelly, but one thing along those lines, that's also where companies and managers can come in, because there are people that want to pour into the community. They've got nonprofits that they're passionate about. Well, being able to pull together people from the company to serve. And I've got a number of clients that do that. And it has become part of the corporate brand and a reason why people want to work there because they do such wonderful things in the community, promote it, and now it's part of the interviewing process.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
it's very cool to see. And so when you can see someone that I like my day job, I appreciate my day job, but I get to do this as well. And that really lights them up. And the company has recognized that and fuels that. Is very cool to see.
Yeah, I think it adds to that contribution you were talking about earlier. Like when your work doesn't feel like it's multiplying as much, but you get to do something that you can kind of see the contribution with your eyes in the moment. Like you were saying, moving tables and chairs for an event, you know, without you being there, maybe it wouldn't have gotten done as fast. And that's like an easy win for people that maybe have a desk job and are, you know, in an office all day to get them out. And so I'm even thinking for the people that don't get to do that now, that's a great suggestion to your manager to say, you know what, I feel like our team could really benefit from going and serving at a local, whatever it is, fill in the blank wherever you are. But
well, and that is something particularly the war for talent. And as 10,000 baby boomers retire each day, and as Gen Z comes up, that's part of what they're looking for. They want to know that the organization where they go to work is making a difference.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to do that is to have an impact in your local community or on a broader basis, but by partnering with nonprofits. And people are recognizing, okay, if we spend time and energy and support this, we get more candidates, better candidates.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe this makes sense for us to pursue. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, as we close our time, I want to just take a moment to give you an opportunity to talk to the person who maybe is feeling that, hey, I'm burnt out. Like it's very clear for me, or maybe I'm worried that I'm feeling those effects. Are there some simple things that you could just say, hey, in the next week, consider doing X, Y, and Z, or maybe A, B, and C?
Yeah. These are going to be random.
Okay.
No doubt. Okay. It's the way my brain works.
Love it.
But the combination of focus on sleep in order to recover and recharge, it is so necessary. And for those of us that spent decades just, who needs it? Well, we all do.
We all do.
And so recognizing that early on, there is also more and more managing your calendar. Putting in a buffer, putting in the white space, putting in your priorities. There's something else that, again, this may be a random thought, but according to Harvard Business Review, the human brain wanders every 47 minutes. Or no, I'm sorry, 47% of the time.
Oh, wow.
So no matter, I hate to say this to a pastor who's preaching up there, that
he's
47% of the time.
You know?
But so embrace that at work, recognize that. And there's a technique called a Pomodoro technique where you block off all distractions, no phone, no interruptions. You put head down, hyper-focused for 25 minutes. Get up, take a break, take a walk, listen to music, meditate, pray, then come back 25 more minutes, hyper-focused on the task at hand. Then you stop. That's it. And in 1 hour, that hyper focus will be more productive than any 3 or 4 hour of interrupted time. And so just building those things into schedules, people get a sense of accomplishment. They get things done. But part of it is the overall idea, you have to set parameters. And to let people know between 10 and 11, no interruptions, don't knock on my door, my cubicle, whatever. It's going to be focused, head down time. But little things like that. But I do think it's, and the other thing is the complementary person, the trusted friend, family member, coworker, that you can have those honest discussions. And it's not just to complain, but I'm feeling frazzled. Things that, you know, the joy isn't there, whatever it is, because sometimes just talking it out helps dramatically.
Yep.
And sometimes it can be the whisper of that person in your ear, Kelly, I think you need to take a break, or whatever, where it's just enough that somebody recognizes it, somebody cares, and I've had people as recently as Tuesday call me up and say, Karl, I need you to pray for me. Out of the blue, it was a 2-minute prayer. That's all I needed. You know, but having someone like that in your life, because sometimes it's just the little release valve out of the stress that's enough to avoid burnout compounding itself. And then there's the need to take vacations uninterrupted, the sabbatical when appropriate, and building that into the culture where you don't feel guilty. It's expected. It causes others to shoulder responsibility, people to elevate their game, teams get stronger, and the recognition, we're all in this together, and we want to be supportive of one another.
Wow, I love all that.
Good.
Something that came to mind
sounds like
is,
a book.
Yeah, I know, right? Something that came to mind too, as you were saying all of those things, but especially at the end, is just like the silence that you can carry in burnout will continue to perpetuate the thought that it all depends on you. And so until you open your mouth, like I'm thinking of how people sit with you and say, I've never told anyone this before. And until that point, they probably have held this belief, like, I can't say anything out loud because I have to take care of all this myself. So a great first step is just to call a friend or find, like we've talked about before, Doug, like a mirror. Find yourself a friend who's a mirror that will tell you, this is how you look or how you sound or how you are acting these days. I've done it and it's horrifying. But they're like, hey, you're kind of mean right now. I'm like, oh no, okay. But it's helpful because otherwise you wouldn't know. So I think just saying it out loud helps you to
and sometimes just the
burden.
very act of speaking it's a release
into
because
the
they
world.
have had it bottled up.
Yeah, and I think that part of a healthy soul is someone who invites correction, because sometimes your face is saying don't talk to me, don't give me feedback, or your response is stone face, or so to be the type of person who receives feedback, you've got to invite it. Right? And Solomon says that the wise man invites correction, and if you receive a rebuke from the wise man, you'll be at home among wise men, which is a really cool concept. Like you want to be at home among wise people, which means the give and take has to be as effortless as possible.
Doug, as you share that, I also think it's a reason to establish that relationship and have those conversations so that even when the person doesn't want to hear it, there's a level of trust in the relationship. Right. And Kelly, I know you don't want to hear this, but I love you, and this is why I need to share it with you. And it's a safe place to have that.
And remember when you invited me to speak into your life? Well, I'm doing that. Right,
the door is closed. You can't. No, just joking. No, it's true. To build those trust relationships when things are healthy, so that when things aren't as healthy in your life, they can come and the door is open. So that's so great. Karl, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. And I think it's just such an appropriate conversation for the work culture of today, post-COVID, and all the things people have faced. So I look forward to people's comments and responses. And for anyone listening, we will put all of these resources that Karl mentioned and more opportunities for you to take a next step in the show notes. So please check that out. But again, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
And to everyone else, we will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Seasons Podcast. Our hosts are Pastor 𝘼𝘼𝙑 and Kelly Hinkey. Seasons is produced by Calvary Chapel Fort Lauderdale, and our theme song is Seasons by Connor Henderson with Calvary Music. For more information about our church or this podcast, visit calvaryftl.org.